this story one more time. I did this story once before, but I looked further into the story, and even though I think it's a civil war, it can't be substantiated yet. Meaning, there's a low-level thing going on where you have one side that is the military or one side of the government. Meaning, and I'm talking about Venezuela. There's been clashes. Let me explain what I mean. I did a video early on to say that there was a civil war in Venezuela. I think there is, but what's taking place can't substantiate that specific claim. So let me be very specific. There's been clashes with what seems like military forces attacking or fighting other military forces. This was spurred on by this. Guaido comes out, and the guy, random guy on the street who calls himself interim president, despite the fact that there is already a president of Venezuela that was elected, Maduro, but he comes out, he has the backing of the United States, which in and of itself is somewhat traitorous. But he comes out and gives this message.
At this moment, we make a great call. When the international community broadly supported our fight, we would be with the people of Venezuela. At this moment, we make a great call to public employees into a fundamental component not only for the transition, but for the reconstruction of Venezuela to recover national sovereignty.
Recover national sovereignty. It's that last one that sticks in my craw. It is not recovering national sovereignty. It's the opposite of recovering national sovereignty. You are literally giving up national sovereignty over to the interests of the United States. Guaido is going to get in office. He's going to accept millions, and he is going to privatize resources. The public does not support this. I guess that's my point. The Venezuelan public doesn't support this. He's calling for an uprising. Now, so in calling for this uprising, throughout Venezuela, there were clashes by people either in military vehicles or wearing military outfits. This footage.
Los están poniendo presos, maldita sea, vale. Mira, mira. Mira. Los están agarrando.
There's more. This also happened at one of the airports. Right. Thought I had footage of the airport one. But here's more.
Juan, es lo que hemos venido reportando de las reacciones.
Escúchame. I want you to notice something. The guys that are standing here in the beginning of the video. Let's go back to the beginning for a moment. Right here. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's not a good example. It's not a good example. Let's see. Essentially, people who are loyal to Guaido has been caught wearing blue armbands. Yeah, right here. So look at this guy. I don't know if you can see him. When it starts. Right here. He's wearing a blue armband. This is apparently their indication that these guys are loyal to Guaido in doing this. Here's the thing. They've stripped Guaido's immunity, legal immunity, meaning he can be arrested. The catch is, if he is arrested, will that create a provocation where the United States intercedes? Meaning, to some degree, any violence that takes place will be used as a sufficient pretext for the United States to say, oh my God, we need to intervene. They're killing protesters, they're killing people. I have to be honest, this comes across to some degree as a civil war to me. Now, Maduro says that he has it under control, and for the most part, there hasn't been any more conflicts like this throughout the country. The country has been silent, meaning he called for uprising, he gets this, and then that's the end of it. But let's be very clear, that's not going to be the end of it. Abrams, the guy who they hired to be in that position, was running weapons in South America to various gangs and squads, kill squads, that the CIA essentially deemed available. Meaning, the various countries in South America that had somewhat left-wing governments, the United States destabilized those governments either through propaganda campaigns or through outright killings. And in some cases, kill squads to push back against the various revolutionary forces in Venezuela, Bolivia, or El Salvador. We're doing bad things. I guess my point is this. The same guy who was doing that back then is the guy who Trump put in the position of being, you could say, the not ambassador of Venezuela, but the envoy to Venezuela. He didn't put him in as a quirk. He put him in because exactly who he was, meaning that horrendous record, the lying to Congress, the atrocious record that Abrams represents was not a bug, it was a feature. And that feature is being played out right now in Venezuela. Where does this end, right? I mean, it seems that they're stepping up this kind of back and forth. And again, the question becomes Guaido. He's walking around with heavily armed men with people who look like military. He's calling for people to uprise. The public itself didn't even know who he was, so he doesn't necessarily have the support of larger public, but he does have support of a superpower and some of the governments that are patsies of that superpower that are regional powers. He may not have the public support, but this is something where he is going to have to deal with for the duration of the Trump presidency, whether that's 2 years or whether that's another 6 years. But again, the question becomes, how does Maduro handle Guaido? And fact of the matter is, if he arrests Guaido, which he is literally operating in coordination with a foreign power to topple the government of Venezuela. Not to mention, he is outright calling for a terrorist rebellion against the legal government of Venezuela. This gets a little dicey. By the same token, if they arrest Guaido, this gives a pretext for the United States to try to say that opposition is being silenced in Venezuela. Politics of regime change. Either way, we'll keep an eye on it. I got rid of the other video because civil war was too strong, even though I think it's a civil war. This is no penchant for ending. Like, where does this end? Maduro's not going anywhere. He's the legal government of the country. Love him, hate him, is irrelevant. I have no feelings about Maduro personally. This is everything to do with Venezuela chooses for Venezuela. I don't need to have a say in this. This is none of my business. They want to get their hands on the wealth of that country. I have none of my business. I shouldn't be doing it. But the question becomes, what does Maduro do with Guaido? Just because you've taken away his immunity, I'd imagine you'd have a hard time touching him. There will be a magnificent provocation. And I suspect that the United States will use it as such. Pay attention to Venezuela. This is a politics of regime change. And at this point, they're not even hiding it. So, I'm going to end this here. I didn't like the last video. Where's my mouse? And so I redid that. I redid this video. So, Guido's a useful idiot. He's not a useful idiot. He knows. Look, the interests of people are not always the same. Like, what I mean by that is, Guido's interest is political power. What is he willing to do for political power? He's willing to sell out Venezuela, the country itself, the resources of the country, the minerals of that country, the sovereignty of that country. He's willing to sell all the way down the river for some level of political clout. That is literally what's taking place. There is a element in Venezuela that the Bolivarian revolution benefited. And those people were benefited magnificently with a certain elite class of the country that hated the fact that the lower part of the population was being attended to. Guaido Guaido, whatever his name is, represents that upper top percent of the population that doesn't necessarily like the order of things in the country. I'm not saying that Venezuela wasn't mismanaged. Let's be honest that the sanctions is playing a much larger role in regards to keeping that country in the straits that it's in. But this is everything to do with us preying on a country. I mean, this just seems outright wrong. Even if you look at Venezuela and think to yourself, God, they're being mismanaged. God, the guy's corrupt. At the very least, let's acknowledge that the United States shouldn't have any say-so on the affairs of what's going on into the country. And this is outright predatory, this kind of political economic merger of sorts, where the political body is using military and CIA resources or covert resources to take down a country, with the economic wing, meaning the corporations being able to get their hands on the resources. Why do I have to make this argument that this is wrong? Why do I have to make this argument? And yet, you find yourself having to make this argument because the consensus in the mainstream media is that the takedown of another nation by hook or by crook is perfectly okay. I don't think that's okay. So I'm going to end this here. Shots fired, clashes that are taking place right now in Venezuela. Well, not right now. Apparently, some of the people have been arrested. But Maduro is saying he has it under control. We will see. But it seems like the coup attempts are escalating. I'll end this here. And by the way, that call for the uprising, it ended, which kind of gives you this level of support that Maduro has. Maduro is supported by the West. He's supported by people outside the country, not people in the country. There's a difference in those things. Don't get me wrong. They do get support. There's a faction of support, but it's like a faction of support in this country that are Democrats or that are Republicans. When they had that million woman march, should Donald Trump have been, taken out of office because he had 1 million people march in the country? No, it doesn't work that way. You have a governmental system. They need to win elected office. Maduro also had massive marches at the exact same time opposition was having massive marches. I'll end it here. If you guys enjoy the content, please consider supporting this content through PayPal or Patreon. This video will be immediately demonetized, just like my other videos dealing with issues of war and peace are demonetized. I'd argue that those are the ones that are most pertinent, because those are things that deal with issues pertaining to us, the humanities. Do you want your country behaving in this way? Yes or no? And if not, to some degree, we need to pay attention to what the country is doing, and we need to act accordingly to whatever opportunities avail itself. So I'm going to end this here. Thank you all, and I'll see you in a few. Have a good one.